Mother's Day is not a day of celebration for everyone. If you are struggling to build your family, whether it's with infertility or miscarriage, this particular holiday can really sting. This episode airs the week before Mother's Day weekend, and I'm sharing some tips for you to help you survive and thrive through this tough time of year for many. Welcome to the Baby or Bust Fertility Podcast, the podcast with interviews and in-depth discussions on reproductive health, created to support anyone curious about infertility, miscarriage, and early pregnancy. I'm your host, Dr. Lora Shahine, a double board-certified OBGYN and reproductive endocrinologist, and former fertility and IVF patient myself, helping build families for almost 20 years, and I'm dedicated to supporting and educating you on your family building journey. You have likely been getting reminders about Mother's Day for a few weeks by now. You've seen the commercials for gift ideas. You're seeing Instagram posts. You're getting emails from companies about planning for the weekend. I actually really appreciate the companies that send the opt-out emails. There's some really respectful companies that will send an email if you're a part of the list, and they'll say, hey, Mother's Day is coming up. If you'd like to opt out of our Mother's Day emails, click here. It's few and far between, but I have seen them, and I really appreciate that. Mother's Day is full of mixed emotions, and I personally have had many Mother's Day days and weekends that were very tough. Whether it was when I was starting to become a mom and I was struggling to have my first child and build my family, and I had a particularly hard time with Mother's Day when I was trying to add to my family. So having secondary infertility or celebrating Mother's Day when I already was a mom with my daughter, but really grieving the fact that I couldn't have another child, it was such a tug. It was such a mixed emotion, a tension between being so grateful that I was a mom, but also grieving the fact that I was really struggling, and then feeling guilty for all of the emotions I was having. I was being celebrated as a mom, but I just knew that my family wasn't complete. If any of these feelings resonate with you, then this episode is for you. Before we continue, I just want to pause and make sure that you realize that this episode is not mean to take away from the beauty of celebrating motherhood or the fun and joy and celebrating all of the mothers in our lives. This is really for people who have mixed emotions when it comes to Mother's Day. Maybe you're not a mother yet, you've had a miscarriage, you're trying to build your family. If you're just grieving this Mother's Day, then this episode is for you, because just like a lot of holidays that celebrate family, it can be really hard. So I am dedicating this episode to anyone that is struggling with infertility, who's had a miscarriage recently or in the past, who's lost a child. This is dedicated to anyone who is longing to be a mother or longing to complete their family. This episode is for you. You are not alone. So, Mother's Day can be wonderful. It can be celebrated. But if it's mixed for you and you're struggling, this episode, we're going to go through 5 tips to help you cope, to help you survive and thrive through Mother's Day. Tip number 1, recognize all of the emotions that you're having. You could feel anger. You could feel sadness, jealousy. I am definitely in touch with that one. I was so envious of people that were celebrating Mother's Day when I wanted to be a mom. And it's okay to have all of these emotions. I think that we are in a time where we're starting to recognize the downsides of toxic positivity. We're so taught to be grateful for what we have when we're feeling that we're grieving something that we've lost. You know, if you're grieving, well, focus on the fact that you have this in your life and you have this in your life. You're so fortunate. And I do believe in that. There's a wonderful place for it. But if we're too focused on being positive to the point where we're denying the feelings and the emotions that come with grieving, we're missing out. It can really start to take its toll So recognize that this weekend or every time you see that commercial or that Instagram post, if you feel those emotions, don't feel bad about feeling those emotions. Give yourself space, give yourself a little grace, allow yourself to feel those emotions and sit in it for a second and then let it pass. So, tip number one is really just to feel all of these emotions, to not try to compartmentalize them or deny these feelings. I am really in touch with compartmentalizing. Compartmentalizing is an amazing way to function as a person training in medicine. It's a way to stuff those feelings down so that you can go to the next patient and deal with that emergent situation, or forget your feelings, forget your emotions in order to talk to another family about something that's really important medical diagnosis. And so for years and years, I compartmentalized emotions, and it's a great way to continue to function and be productive and get things done that you need to do. But those emotions don't really go anywhere. And I've started to really learn about the importance of feeling these emotions, not feeling shame or guilt for wanting to complete your family, to be grateful and feel negative emotions at the same time. And I hope that that's really, really helpful. By feeling, you could express this by talking to someone. You could write your feelings down in a journal. You could just sit in them for a second and say, I'm feeling this, and then get on with your day. Whatever is right for you. I hope that this tip is really helpful. Tip number 2, just say no. What does this mean? Well, a lot of Mother's Days can be full of celebrations and brunch and events, and these things are wonderful. It's great to gather as a community and celebrate the mothers in our lives, but if this is just going to be too painful to face. And I want you to be open with yourself and think about what you can be present for and what you might not be able to do this particular Mother's Day. You can celebrate the mothers in your life without actually going to that brunch or that party if it's going to be too painful. You can send a card, you can call, you can reach out, you can send a gift. You need to take care of yourself. And sometimes that means just saying no. And I want you to give yourself permission for doing that. It's really hard to do sometimes. For me, this meant not going to a certain Mother's Day celebration. When my daughter was a little over a year, I had a great group of friends that were all the same age and starting young families. And my girlfriends wanted to get together and celebrate Mother's Day and bring our young children. And so many of the women in that group were already pregnant with their second child, and some of them even their third. And I was so fortunate to be a mom, and I was so happy that I had my daughter, but I just felt lapped, secondary infertility. And it was just such a painful reminder. So I opted out of that celebration. I still sent texts and cards to these women in my life that I wanted to celebrate, but I decided to celebrate Mother's Day in my own way, and I just needed to not be present at that particular time. That was the right decision for me. We're going to get back to the show in just a minute, but I wanted to remind you just how important it is to follow the show wherever you're listening and to rate and review it. Here's a review I loved. It's titled Heart Meets Expertise. I've been loving this podcast. Thank you. As an OBGYN who faced many years of infertility and has walked that line between patient and provider, I really resonate with how Dr. Shahine handles these topics. Compassion, care, true stories, relatable experiences, expert insights. It really has it all. Wow. Thank you, Alyssa, for writing this review. I really appreciate it. So please, wherever you're listening to this podcast, take some time to give it a review. Really, really helps people find the show. Now let's get back to some tips on Mother's Day. Tip number 3, ask for help. You are not in this alone. Infertility, miscarriage, this fertility community. This is an incredibly supportive community. It's a club that nobody wants to join or wants to be here, but when you are, you're just welcomed with open arms. And if you ask for help, it can be there, and it can be in so many different forms. It can be reaching out, of course, with mental health support, like a therapist or a Resolve fertility online group or in-person support group. It can be reaching out to a friend, that one person that really knows what you're going through, that person that you can confide in, and you're able to share those negative feelings and lets you sit in negativity for a little while, and then, helps you circle back and try to feel good about other things in your life. So whether it is finding support with that special person, finding support within the community, with a therapist, with your team, whatever you need, just checking in, finding that support, realizing that you're not alone. Sometimes we need to be alone to heal, but too much isolation can sometimes start to spiral. And you need to reach out and find connections with other people. I just think it's an incredibly important thing to do in the way that is right for you. For me, when I was struggling, this person was my sister-in-law. She lived in Houston at the time. I was in my fellowship at Stanford. I was really struggling to, add to my family. I was starting to go through fertility treatments. I was thinking about doing IVF as a next step. And it was really nice to have this person who lived in Houston, outside of the sort of everyday circle, someone that really knew what I was going through and would be there for me when I reached out to call her. But just that incredible person that I could connect with, sort of on my terms. And she was just really always there for me. And so I hope that you can find that person or the people that are your support group. Tip number 4, indulge. And this can be whatever is right for you, but finding something to indulge in. And what I mean is something that you don't just routinely do on a regular basis. So if you get on a Peloton 3 times a week, indulging is not doing another Peloton ride. It can be snuggling up in your robe and reading a book all Sunday morning. It can be going for a long walk. It can be getting a spa treatment like a massage or a facial. It could be going out to an incredible restaurant that you've been waiting to get a reservation at, or your favorite burrito place down the street. But if you go there a lot, maybe we're going to try to find something a little bit more special. But maybe that burrito is right for you. For me, indulging is forgetting the checklists, forgetting trying to feel accomplished by being productive. For me, it is allowing space to truly decompress. And I actually have to actively make that happen sometimes. So for me, it's taking a long walk, it's reading a good book, it's snuggling with my dog, Oliver. For me, indulging is just really making space to decompress and recoup. And so find that thing that is an indulgence for you and make sure that you make that happen for yourself soon. And finally, tip number 5 is to make plans this weekend to do something on Mother's Day weekend that has nothing to do with being a mother. You can go to the store and you're going to see cards for Mother's Day. You can go out and you'll see people celebrating Mother's Day brunch. And you can do these things if that's right for you and you're celebrating the mother in your life. But make sure that there's something else that you're doing on this weekend that is just for you. Maybe it is going on a date night with your partner or loved one. Maybe it's going for a solo hike or a hike with a friend that you haven't spent a lot of time with lately or you want to confide with. Maybe you want to go away for the weekend. If you just want to do a little getaway and just be away and have a wonderful time, maybe that is the right thing to do. There's something very healing about having something to look forward to. So if you know that there's a holiday, there's a Mother's Day, there's something coming up that might be triggering for where you are in your life right now, making plans to do something that is totally unrelated to Mother's Day, but is something that you're looking forward to, you are enjoying, that can be incredibly healing. There's a beauty in looking forward to it. There's a beauty in planning what you're planning to do. There's a beauty in being there and actually enjoying whatever you plan to be. Just that planning, having something to look forward to, whatever it is for you, can be a wonderful coping technique. So let's recap. Mother's Day can be an amazing celebration, but it can also be full of mixed emotions and really, honestly, triggering for anybody that is struggling to be a mom and is not a mom yet, or someone who is a mother and celebrating that, but really knows that their family is not complete and they'd like to add to their family. These are really tough feelings, tough reminders, and it's important to realize that you are not alone. And as far as the tips that we went through, tip number 1, recognizing these emotions and allowing yourself to feel them. Tip number 2, just say no to those celebrations and gatherings that are going to be more painful than healing. Tip number 3, ask for help. Reach out to that support person or persons, whoever they may be in your life. Tip number 4, indulge. And whatever that means to you, do something that feels special to you. And tip number 5, make plans that you can look forward to doing something this Mother's Day weekend that has nothing to do with Mother's Day, but is all about celebrating you. I hope that these tips are helpful. Something I'd love for you to do is to share this episode with someone in your life that would benefit from listening to this episode. Just taking the time to send it to that person that you know is struggling this weekend. I hope that these tips can help your friend and loved one. You can find this episode and all others on my website, drlorashahine.com, and also on my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Lora Shahine. You can find more educational material on Instagram and TikTok. Please reach out to our email, hello@drlorashahine.com, with any topics that you'd like us to cover, people you'd love us to interview. Thank you to our friends at Seattle Sperm Bank and Braze Runs Production for sponsoring the show. Thank you to the producer, Shannon Perry, and her wonderful team at Audiotocracy. This is your host, Dr. Lora Shahine, and I'll see you next week. And until then, wishing you love, luck, and pineapples.